Hey everyone, how's it going? Let me play a little more. New strings, and I heard it. Let's do that one again, all right? I'm going to play over that, and I want to just kind of talk about the guitar stuff a little bit more. So let me just play that track, because that's a fun one. And I'm going to mess with the guitar knobs a bit more. Okay, here we go. Okay, so turn the tuner off. Make it work. All right. There we go. Cool. How you guys doing? Good to be here talking about the Les Paul. So first of all, everybody, thanks so much again for being here. I appreciate it. New strings on the Les Paul. It's fun. I was getting online. I'm like, I'm talk about the Les Paul, and I realized my strings sounded like completely dead. You know, when you pluck that string, it goes thud, and it's supposed to ting. It just was a thud. So I had to change strings really fast. So, all right. So let's talk about, well, first of all, hey, everyone, Phil Mingan, the fantastic friend and moderator to the stars, is moderating for today. So thank you, and everybody who's here. And all my courses on my TrueFire No, all my TrueFire courses on my website are on sale. 25% off only through my website. And everybody who's picked those up in the past, I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. It's how I make my living. And we have the tip jar and all that kind of stuff. Well, you guys have been generous with that. I really appreciate that as well, because it allows me to keep on doing this. And if you feel the need to help me feed my family, it's a great way to do it. Okay, let's talk about the guitar. Now, the funny thing, I don't know, maybe by a lot of you guys, I used to think about my Les Paul, or when I was playing Jacksons and things like that, it was on or off, right? The volume knob was up or it was down, and I had like multi-channel amps where I'd have a clean tone, and then I would, all this, in my mind now, stupid stuff, yeah. Like, I realized that none of my players who I really loved did anything like that. So let's talk about the first things first. What the guitar is. Now, yes, this is a fancy schmancy Les Paul. Yes, I realize that. But it really comes down to any halfway decent guitar, and I'm talking about the 2 humbucker guitars with the 4 knobs. So this goes for a lot of other guitars, but we'll do one on Strats, and they're different, of course. But how I can really figure out how to get the most out of the guitar and to be really expressive with it, hopefully. There's a video of Clapton with Cream from the Farewell to Cream show, where it's a crazy video. That whole video is crazy with the English narrator, interviewer, where Clapton looks a little stoned. He's talking about his guitar tone behind a bunch of Marshalls, and it's amazing. And I learned a lot from just that video about him talking about turning up and down the volume knobs and the tone knobs. And I ran to my Les Paul, and I was like, oh, that's what I've been missing. So the first things first. You guys are going to probably want to know what this is. It's a historic makeover. It's an R9. And these are throwback pickups. Like I said, that doesn't really matter. Yeah, it helps, blah, blah, blah. But not that much. It really comes down to how you figure out how to use the stuff. So I have the 50s wiring, because I like that better, because I find it makes the tone knob and the pickups a little more interactive. Somebody with much more understanding of that can explain it. You may want to look that up. I am not so great at explaining what the difference between the vintage, like a 50s wiring versus the modern wiring, other than like this is hooked up to your volume. It goes to I don't know. I forget. All I know is when I had it done, I liked it better. So let's talk about that first. So the first thing, here's my guitar tone. A little bit of a breakup. I'm using the Bloomfield drive. Kind of set it to how I like to have an amp. Let's talk about that first. Kind of like having things at the point of breakup here like this. All that stuff, like you hear all those videos. At the edge of breakup. But what people mean is that kind of... That's the guitar tone. So if I bring my volume all the way up... Now, since we're not talking real life here in a sense of that we're going through an aux and it's coming through little speakers, there's no volume, like real volume going on. So that's a big part of this whole thing with how much gain I have, meaning like if I were live, I could probably have a little less gain because the air would be moving. And when you play live, it just feels better because you're literally creating a circuit between you and the amplifier. The sound is coming to the guitar, going into your pickup, so it becomes like this living thing, which we really can't get at this volume. Simply physics does not allow it. So that being into account, like this is a little more distorted than I might usually use on a gig, because whatever, for those reasons, because we're not on a gig. So that's it. I've had the amp kind of right here. So here's my full volume. Might even drop that back a hair. A little bit of gain. So what I can do now to get my clean tone in quotation marks is I roll back my volume. Right? So I never play with a really pristine clean tone. I just don't really love the way that sounds. Even if I'm using a Fender, like it's always kind of on that edge of breakup, and that, especially with the tube amplifier, allows the amp to kind of breathe, and you get that bloom that people talk about, where the notes sort of pop out, and you get a natural compression from the tubes. So this is what I'm riding on. There's my volume knob, right? And we'll talk about other guys and how the way approach it, but this is kind of your classic, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck. If you talk about more fusion guys like Michael Landau, you always see him messing with the knobs, and this is why. So I'm dropping back the volume a little bit. So that's kind of my clean tone. Now, one thing about you notice about your volume knobs is that they have sort of a slope, and they're not always, they're like people say linear pots versus audio paper pots and all these things like that. You have to do it by ear. You can never do it by hand or by visual, in my mind, unless you really know the pot well. So check this out. Full volume. See, I brought down the volume, cleaned up a lot, but it didn't get that much lower in volume. It just kind of cleaned up. So I'm gonna keep on going. And now I reached like the slope where it, see what I mean? Like, you find that spot, and you got to do it by ear where your pot drops off. Now, these are these VIP pots. They're pretty cool. I think it was my friend Holger Notzel told me about them, and then Joey Landers and I were talking about them. And they're great. I really like them. So they have the right kind of 50s taper. So here's some things that are pretty way down. Drops down too much in volume, but there's a sweet spot before it gets gainier. And you go down here. Now, I find this, we're still see it's staying bright. Like, we don't need a treble bleed pot. Like, okay, treble bleed, you ever know sometimes if you turn down your guitar volume, the pickup gets a little muddy or a little darker sounding. With the 50s wiring, that doesn't seem to happen as much. And with good pots. So good pots are really important, and a good capacitor to really get into this sort of thing. And this isn't necessarily expensive. I forget what these pots were. They were like, I don't know, 30, 40, 30 bucks. I can't remember. They were reasonably priced, and it's a major upgrade. If you have like just a regular Les Paul's a Les Paul. You got a Les Paul. I found when I went to 50s wiring and changed out the pots and the capacitor, it is not very expensive. It's a great upgrade, especially if you already like your pickups, like the stock burst buckers and the 57 Classic. Those are perfectly really good pickups, right? So just if you kind of want, that's a kind of cool investment if you want to start really working these things to the extent that we're talking about. I'm talking a lot. Okay, so I love this stuff. So if I'm talking too much, just let me know. Okay, so here's what it still stays clean and still bright. And roll it back. So it still stays kind of brisk, right? And got that top to it. So that would be the pots, and I believe part of the thing about the 50s wiring, but definitely the pots. Crappy pots don't sound as good. I just had this conversation with David Grissom. He has a Les Paul, and he's like, "How'd you like those pots?" And he bought them, and he's like, "Wow, what a difference!" So I'm not making it up. It's a real thing, and that's where companies will cut corners. Okay, so VIP pots, you just search them, you can find them. Okay, so now, like I said, you look for that magic spot where the volume jumps down, and you ride through that, and then you set your amount of gain or the volume of your amp basically against it. Right? So I still have the volume up and down on the guitar, and also cleans up too. Okay, so full up, it comes louder, but more distorted. If I bring it down just a hair, we lost some volume, but we kind of cleaned up more. All right, so now I'm repeating myself. Okay, let's talk about this treble knob, the tone control. This is where the 50s wiring really kind of makes it interesting. Like it gets darker, but it doesn't get really dark. You can really tweak it. See, check it out. I'm just gonna bring it. So it almost changes the volume too. I can't explain how it works. It becomes an intuitive thing. So check it out. See? Like it all the way down, of course that, but it kind of works as a bit of a volume control too. So I can really tweak it in to keep a lot of the high end on the pickup if I want to darken it up a little bit. Pull up. You take a little back. So you can really... I found I can dial it in much easier than a regular wiring, the modern wiring, where this becomes much more drastic and they're not as interactive. So, like I said, I wish I could explain it better. I wish I knew the technical angle of it, other than it just sounds kind of cool. Sounds cooler. Back here. So you find that spot where you're like, yeah, nope, and it's all by look, because each pot's different. So right now I'm at about 6.5, and I just do it by ear. Okay, so now it's the same thing with the neck pickup. Okay, so we're still kind of keeping the high end. Now, neck pickups on a Les Paul are always challenging with overdrive, because sometimes you can get woofy and muddy, right? So what I end up trying to do is to dial the amp in a little brighter on the top. So I dial the amp in for my neck pickup. Roll it back here. Because, the intro, sorry, I'm thinking the intro, Sweet Child of Mine. Sometimes a neck pickup on a Les Paul can sound like that really thick, American woman sort of thing. And we'll talk about the woman tone in a minute. But, right, so sometimes the neck pickup on a Les Paul can do that. So I try to dial the amp in so it's as clean or clear, almost as stratty as I can make it. So I might find that makes my bridge pickup a little too bright. So listen. No, that's much bitier now, right? So what I'm going to do is try to match them a bit. So let's try. Pull it up. Rolling back there. Watch, it goes between the two. Turn that treble back up. So I think when you find that sweet spot on the bridge pickup, you're matching the two of them so it doesn't have this really dramatic change. This is what Clapton was talking about. I know Joe Bonamassa has talked about this at length, because it's one of the Les Paul kind of tricks in a way. So hope it's coming through the internet. Pull up. Much bitier. Just gotta match them out. Okay, cool. So I love that. Thinking about that. So I get all these different sounds out of the guitar already, and I match them up so when I'm playing, I don't feel like I'm jumping to this really bright tone. We're really talking about, more bluesy and say like fusion-y things. If you're playing in a metal band, these subtleties are lost, and I don't mean that as any insult to metal. If you got a ton of gain on, the guitar doesn't clean up the same. It's a different thing. It's a different setup. So this really, for me, holds true to like blues, classic rock, blues rock, fusion, and all those kind of things, where you want to get the most out of the guitar. So when I was younger, I just thought I was like, I got this pickup and that pickup, and I got the volume, and the volume's all the way up, and then the volume's all the way down. when I want to not play. All right, so I never thought about what you can get out of the guitar. So if I put on that track for a second, I'm just going to kind of tweak the tones of here, and then we can start talking about some questions. I'm not done yet. Plenty of stuff to talk about. All right, let me just get a different track. Let's see, we're going to do something a little more fusion-y. So how does this feel? I haven't played this in a while, so let's do up. Okay, so. Minor. Right? Live. Now I want to get a little more gain. Might hit an overdrive. Now if I go to the neck. So you see how it's kind of bright on the neck? If I go to the bridge with the full tone, it feels too bright to me, so dial that back. There it is. To me, that sounds where it wants to live, right? Where it doesn't cut through too much in a horrible way. All right, so now on this particular guitar, I have the reverse wired pickup, that Peter Green thing. Okay, so what's going on with this is this pickup has a reverse magnet, so literally it's facing in a different direction, was north south, I can't remember, but it's out of phase, reverse polarity, so it gives us this that B.B. King and certainly the Peter Green sound. Yeah. Yeah. That whole sound. So now what's really fascinating about this is if I roll back one knob, it changes dramatically. Almost like it goes out of phase. So I can start to get some of that standard Les Paul mixture of the pickups, which I'll talk about in a second. So I have the Peter Green out of phase, and I can dial in the amount of phase. Do I want a darker phase? Or so it's really great. But if I change the tone, it gets louder, so the volume. So it's really interesting. Usually with this one, though, when I want that sound, I kind of usually go to them fully up, so you get that full-on, that nasal thing. Now, when you see a lot of guys with Les Pauls, they'll turn both volumes down at the same time. So you're keeping that mixture of the two. And I go there. Okay, so that's a pretty specialty thing, just because I'm a big Peter Green fan. I put those in. So now, one final thing, we get some questions. If I go to, say, the PRS, which has the 594, which is dialed in, it's like a regular kind of Les Paul sort of sound, between the bridge and the middle. So, very different sounding guitars, right? Both pretty killer. These are lower output pickups for sure. Now if I go here, I get that really Jimmy Pagey stuff going on. Right, and match these up. So I can dial in what Page did, and Al Di Meola, a lot of these guys, is they would leave it often in the middle pickup, and what they would do is dial in how much bass you would want. So I can get this. Here's my bridge, neck. I go in the middle. If I wanted to get it a little brighter, right? Now if I want to make it a little darker, I go from that original sound, and then dial this back. So I still have some of the brights. It's not the neck pickup. It's a little bit of the bridge dialed in. So it's pretty cool, and I can dial those in unison by just doing my hand together. So that's one of the cool things to think about too, that how they interact with each other. Now I know they have the 50s wiring in this as well. So, all right, and my last little favorite Les Paul trick, so to speak, is the woman tone that Clapton talks about. And there, all he's doing is you go to the neck pickup and then dial back your tone knob. Right? That kind of like. And you get that great kind of those fuzzy sound, almost like a fuzz. You know, like Outside Woman Believes It. That's that sound. The kind of fluty things. That's pretty cool. I love using that. And Peter Green would use that a bit too on like Rattlesnake Shake. You hear that kind of sound. I always wish I could play you these examples, but I always wonder if I'm going to get dinged for playing something like that. So, then there's all sorts of other stuff, guys, like how hard and soft you pick, you know, the dynamic. So if I'm going to pick down here in the bridge, I can do the same thing in the neck, you know. Right? So that's a big deal. And my final thought is one, you know, you guys know obviously my relationship with Robin. One of the most crazy things when I started working with him was that he doesn't touch the volume knobs on his guitar at all. So all of his dynamics are coming from his hands, which is fucking nuts when you really get into it. So when you do me a favor, next time you watch Robin's videos, watch his right hand, because his right hand is really unique and cool in how he does everything. That's where he's getting all his dynamics from. I try to strive for some of that, but so when he's going for a lead tone, he just steps on a boost. But everything else is all, he doesn't touch the volume on the guitar at all to change any of the dynamics. So, you know, that's pretty amazing. But for most of us, and the sounds I like to get, not that I don't like his sounds, of course, but, you know, he plays very clean, so it's a little more easy to do that. Quotation marks easy. I like working with the volume knob because it can get the less and more distortion. And then still play softer. So there you go. A general rundown on how I think about a Les Paul, and it really started off from me getting one and just thinking there's only limited things you could do. Now that being said, if I'm going on a gig and I'm just got to play a ton of different music and I don't know what's coming, I'm always going to bring a Strat. I find them, I find them to be more versatile overall, because playing funk on a Les Paul or something a little more delicate, you can do it for sure. It's not quite as easy. I feel like it's easier to thicken up a Strat and get it to sound fuller, obviously, like with pedals and things, than it is to thin out a Les Paul. Okay, I mean, you can do that with EQ pedals, and we'll talk about that in another video. Things like that, all these ways we can tone shape, which is a ton of fun, and I'm kind of obsessed about all this stuff. But I only used a boost here and there just to show you, but everything was really just me plugged into the amp. And I think I talked about this last week, that the amp is the bigger factor. Like if you say you've got, a budget, should I spend more on the guitar or the amp? I would always go for the good amp, and then you can upgrade your guitar later. In other words, like if you thought like, I want to buy a Les Paul standard, or I want to buy a custom shop R9, which is a huge price differential, I would say to somebody, what kind of amp are you playing through? And if you're like, well, I'm playing through a Boss Katana, which is totally fine amp, I would say upgrade your amp first, because that's when you're going to start to hear the difference. A mediocre or a good guitar is going to sound really good through a good amp, and a spectacular guitar will sound like anything else through a Boss Katana or something like that. Okay, so that's just my thought on that. Any other thoughts on this before we start taking some questions? I think that's kind of it. Oh, yeah, so like I said, I would always bring a Strat to a gig because I find them just kind of easier to deal with and I'm ultimately a Strat guy. As much as I love Les Pauls, if Desert Island, it would be a Strat. But once you start digging into a Les Paul, and it was really Eric Clapton and Peter Green that turned me around on this stuff, and got me to see what you could really be done, and Jimmy Page, right? Because you watch him getting all those sounds out of it. He's got push-pulls. I don't have any kind of push-pulls on this. I'm just not really. I just want it to be a Les Paul. I'm not trying to cover too much ground with it, if that makes sense. Okay. Well, I'm glad everybody's hanging in. Hopefully this isn't boring. All right, so let's get some questions. Let's say hi to Hey Hermano, what's up? Hey Hermano just got a new amp today. Hermano got a Friedman small box killer amp. Great amp. All right, let's say hi to everybody. BV's here. Tom Minette, what's up, Tom? Bill Spruce Bro, Michael Fuchs, Phil Dossier. We got Richard and Sarah, Mason Patton. Some new guys, right? Some new guys. Hey, Graham Ross, Matt Gibson, what's up, man? And yeah, a bunch of new people. Thanks so much, everyone who's coming here. And if you all came here from maybe new, let us know how you heard of me. Maybe was it through the TrueFire stuff, or was it through Keith and 5 Watt World? That was a ton of fun. All right, can you talk about you set your amp? Okay, this is from, hey, Matt Gibson. Can you talk a bit more about how you set your amp for the neck pickup? Any tips? Yes, okay, of course. Okay, so here we go. So let's say I want to dial in for my bridge. We gotta leave. That might be a little bright, so I might actually kind of darken that up a hair. I'm turning my bass up and turning my treble down, just for example. Right, so sounds cool, but now when I go to the neck, it almost sounds like I'm doing the woman tone, and that's what I definitely don't want. So if I go back to where it was, so what they're going to start to do, first I'm going to roll back that bass bit. See what I mean? It already got rid of that flub. So here's the bass. And this isn't a flubby amp. It's just any amp in a Les Paul. You got to find the sweet spot on any amp, especially if you're playing with overdrive. Right? Now if I dial back that bass, And always dial your amp by ear. The knobs mean nothing, right? So check it out. Right? So you say to me it's a little more stratty at that point, for lack of a better comparison. So then when I go to the bridge, it still sounds great depending on what I'm looking for, but I might want to match it out. So once again, Matt, I'm going to... Right? And... dial it back here. Sean Varley, what's up, man? Right? So they're kind of a lot closer now in tone. So hopefully that answers the question. So you have to do it by ear. For example, Marshalls have passive tone knobs, so they're just cuts. So it's different than a Fender or like the Two-Rock, which are active tones. So you turn up the bass, the bass gets more. So you have to do it by ear. In that pedal show, Matt Schofield talks about how he dials in his amp, and it's exactly the same kind of thing I do, but he just expresses it really well, and you can hear it really well. But that's the same kind of thing. I'm waiting for it to get to where it doesn't flub out, but I get a fullness into the guitar. Okay. Pickup covers or no? I always have pickup covers because they look cooler. So I know they're supposed to get more high end with no pickup covers, but whatever. I maybe I'll do that at some point, but I just love that look, so I just have always gone with it. I know that's kind of part of it. I think it just looks much cooler with the covers on it. That's me. Okay, so and also another thing, like the way I have this amp set isn't really how I might have it set on a real gig. Because I'm using the aux in a virtual speaker cabinet. So once again, all bets are off. I just have to dial it in to what I think sounds like a good guitar sound. So when I play this maybe un-oxed, like straight through, I might go, oh, that's really kind of thin sounding. So I might have to dial in the bass, or kind of dark. I might have to put a little more treble. So it's all by ear. So you have to keep that in mind, which is was kind of freeing in one level, right? I was just like, oh man, when people say dime everything on a Marshall, that sounds like shit usually, because everything becomes too much. Sometimes diming everything on my super lead can sound really farty and terrible, because amps have a sweet spot in which they live in. Okay. Here we go. How hard is it to keep your Gibsons in tune? I have no problem with this guitar whatsoever. And I think it comes down to a really well-cut nut. This was from Historic Makeovers, but my friend Matt Brewster at 30th Street, he was just great. I had brought my other Les Paul to him that I used to own, and I was having a little bit of a problem with the G-string sticking, and he just fixed it, and it never had a problem with it yet. I don't put anything in the nut. I think sometimes people say just some of them stay in tune better than others. I've been really fortunate, so I gotta say, Matt has always worked on my guitars, so maybe that's what it is. And he says, because if you look at the PRS, when they solved this problem, they come straight down, right? There's a straight line from the nut to the string, whereas the Gibson pulls off to the side, right? So you've got this, they pitch off to the left and to the right, and as a result, they get stuck in the nut. So what Matt does is he kind of, at the end here, I think he says you open it up a little bit. So it kind of goes around a smooth corner as opposed to a sharp edge. That's what he was telling me, but it's always been really good. I don't put anything in it or anything like that. So Gibson must be paying to me to say that. No, this is pretty funny. Never had a problem with it. I got lucky, maybe, I know a lot of people do. And you bend, it's like, dink, and that note just pops, yeah. Okay. As far as playability goes, how does your Les Paul feel compared to a modern Fender, assuming both set up well? How does the tone differ from a Strat with a humbucker single? Oh, okay. It's a good question, Richard. At that point, it comes down to a scale length. A humbucker-based Strat, Super Strat with a regular Fender scale is going to sound different because the shorter scale on a Gibson really has a different envelope to the notes. The notes just sound different. There's a different attack. So that's one thing. Like your humbucker Strat will never sound exactly like a Les Paul. You can get it close and like way good enough, for gigs and recordings. But if you want a Les Paul, you need a Les Paul, right? Or something akin to it, like the PRS with the same scale length. That's going to be as close as you get. So for a lot of it it's the scale length, and of course like the thickness of the body and all those kind of things in construction, blah blah blah. That'll get you into the ballpark. But the scale length I think is huge. Now in terms of how they feel, I don't know. They just feel like I don't want them to feel the same, which is what I really like about them, But because every time I pick one up, I want to play a little differently. Like, so the DGT, the PRS sent over, I love it because I can kind of shred on that one a little more. It's something about that neck allows me to just play faster. And, like the cutaway here, like the PRSs are much easier to get up top. If I'm playing like Hendrixy sort of stuff, it just doesn't sound or feel right on a Les Paul to me. So, I guess that's just a personal taste, but part of the joy of the guitars is they all feel and play different, and therefore I play differently, which is part of the fun, right? Like a 7 1/4 Strat, I can't rip on as much as like a 10-inch or a 12-inch radius. The action's higher, and then the curvature of the fingerboard and then the curvature of the bridge finds it. When it's just, here's my theory. I think it's true. The flatter plane of say like a Les Paul or like a Super Strat, a flatter fingerboard, I find it easier to kind of play faster because there's not the curve of the fingerboard too that I have to kind of make up for as well, because my old Strat's got the curved bridge to match the curvature of the fingerboard. So I find sometimes I can't shred as much on the old Strat. That's why Eric Johnson had, flattened out the fingerboard radius on an old Strat, which of course we would never do nowadays, but he did that. Farty is an official musical term, and you know exactly what I mean, right? Right? That's a fart. Have I ever had a guitar plecked? Years ago I had a Sir. It was plecked, and it was great. Yeah. Michael Tuttle does most of my guitar work. He does it all by hand, and so does Holger and Notzel, the two guys who do my stuff. They're spectacular. So it doesn't have to be plecked. Plecked, I think, makes it easier to be more perfect, but Michael's guitars are just as good as any plecked guitars, and same with the work that Holger's done. So I don't think, I think if you have a really great guitar fret guy, the pleck doesn't become a big deal. But if you've got a shop that's got a pleck, I think it's pretty cool. I haven't noticed any kind of huge difference between a really good fret job and a pleck. I don't know. Are PRSs plecked? I don't know. Their fret job's great too. All right. Do I have a pickup height preference? All right. This is from Stu O. I don't want them to where they sound right. They're a little lower. I mean, I don't like high output pickups because then you hear the pickup more than the guitar, right? Because it'll overtake the wood of the guitar. And some people say like the wood's got nothing to do with the guitar tone. They're completely wrong. The wood has a ton to do with guitar tone. All right. But if you have a high output pickup with like active electronics like an EMG, less so. So the throwbacks, these are the SLE 101s. They're just your regular PAF output. So I like that. And what was that pickup? Sorry. So I just go by the height where it feels right and where it sounds good, where everything sounds kind of even and not too boomy. So kind of hard to see. I think my camera will go out of focus, but the neck pickup is actually below, it's below the pickup ring. It's a little higher in the back, and it all comes down to your personal playing. Like I think Robin played this, and he felt it was a little too close for him. So he's like, oh, I would lower these. And so it becomes a bit of a preference. But if it's too high, it won't sound good either. Action. Medium, I guess. This is from Renee. I kind of go for like a medium action. I don't know what that technically means. Super low I can't stand, and super high I have a hard time playing. So I don't measure it. I just kind of, go by, I do it myself, all the setups. And I just kind of know what I like. I like a little bit of relief in the neck, and I don't want it too low where everything snaps out. I mean, I just had to adjust the neck because it got warm again. So I wish I had a better answer for that, but medium action. Super high I have a hard time with. Super low I can't play at all because you can't be dynamic with it. Do string gauges affect tone? Absolutely, and we all know that Rick Beato did that really kind of cool video. That cool video where we were talking about string gauges. I just stick to 10s for general stuff. I mean, if I were getting heavily into recording and using like tons of overdrive, I would maybe experiment with that, because thinner strings sometimes sound better with lots of overdrive. Okay. Let's see. What gauge do I use? I use 10s, just regular old D'Addario 10 through 46 or 42, whatever the standard one is. All right. Cool. Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to experimenting, guys. With the sound that you want. It comes down to playing a lot. A little too much. Just kind of find that right spot. All right. Top wrapping. I have tried it on my old Les Paul, and it was terrible for me. Hated it. Everything felt loose and crappy. And also, I didn't get enough downward pressure on the nut. So the string tension to the sync, maybe sometimes Gibsons can be a little different. So I always just regular wrap it. I have the tailpiece fairly close to the body. I have it as low to the body as I can get it, where the strings don't touch the back of the tailpiece, of the saddles, I mean, right? So like over here, I can kind of push, and there's clearance. So it's freely going from here, but it's as far down as it can go, and I think that sounds better. It'll also help with string tension, because some guitars just for some reason play stiffer than others. Just happens. So you can actually smooth up that tension a little bit by bringing up the tailpiece a little bit, or a lot. It's up to you. But I kind of have it pretty far down, so as long as it's not touching the back here. Okay, somebody just, yeah, okay, David Holmes, the top wrapping and tailpiece height. Okay. Weight on a Les Paul. Okay, I medium, well, I don't know. This is 8 pounds, 2 ounces. So this one's really light. My gold top's 8 pounds, 7 ounces or something, 8 pounds, 8 ounces, something like 8.5 pounds. That seems to be the weight I like, between 8. If it's a little too light, I don't really like it. If it's too heavy, if it's heavy, it can still sound really good. I just don't want to carry it. I don't want to play it, because this is a great weight. I can bring this with me and not want to shoot myself, or stand up with it all night and not be like, oh my God. So it's a big deal, especially if you're gigging, which nobody is anyway, but so what's too cheap for a Les Paul? Would you bother with an Epiphone? Guys, that's a really tough question. what I would look for, I would just always try to get into a Les Paul Standard at least. There's the resale value. If you decide you don't like it, you can always sell it for more money. So Les Paul Standard would be the way I'd get into. And then I would not, the Epiphones can be really cool. I'm not saying they're not. But I think if I don't know what the prices are, but like a used Les Paul Standard may not be that much crazier than like a Les Paul Studio. And I don't really love the Les Paul Studios. I think in that point, if you have, it's worth waiting to save up for a little bit. Also, used custom shop gold tops. Not saying $3,000. It's inexpensive. I've seen them anywhere between like 25 or 3 or less. Like if you want a lifer guitar, you know, that's what a really good guitar costs. Some people are like, oh, it's so expensive. I'm like, well, you should see my car. You know what I mean? I don't care about that. So I put the money into the instruments because that was more important to me. So but my point is, so once I got this, it's like, I'm done. I'm done. And I've got a great guitar. So that's the way I think about the instruments. I don't, if you're looking for a good Les Paul, just try to go for the best one you can possibly afford. I find it to be more the case with Gibsons than, say, Fenders. Like some Mexican-made Fenders, I think are spectacularly good. I just find maybe about the construction or something, the hardware, you know, the finish, all those kind of things. So as much as you can fork out on a Gibson, that would be what I would say. Then you're also talking about PRSs, which are less money, and I would say much better guitar off the rack than Gibson. You know, like the 2 PRSs I got, they're just out of the box, ready to go, no issues. Are they a Les Paul? If you want the look of a Les Paul, then you get a Les Paul. You know, but if you want a problem-free guitar with a great fret job, I would go with the PRS. Okay. Another question. Sure, Renee. Have you ever had heavier strings, 12s, turned down a tone, a la Robin Trower, but I believe he adds a bit of everything. I tried heavier strings for a while. Like I was using 10 through. I tried 11s on Les Paul. I got some hand issues, so it wasn't worth it for me. It's a bigger tone maybe, but I can't. It wasn't that big a difference for me. And I love the way a heavy string feels in the right hand, but I have problems with some hand issues with the left hand. So me using 11s or that will just, it's a bad idea for me. Okay. Do you have a lot of relief dialed in? No, very little actually. I don't like a lot of relief. I like a little bit of relief. So in other words, relief is that, you know, when you tweak your neck, how far away the strings are from the frets. So I go by eye. I eyeball it, you know. And I don't like that much. Too much is, I find it very difficult to play. And when it's right flat against the frets, like, you know, there's no dynamic. So it's about finding that right spot. And that's where having a really well-cut nut is really important, too. That's important. Sometimes if you get a guitar and the nut is too high, everything feels weird and you can't play that well. So every Gibson I've tried off the shelf, the nut was a little high for me. That's me, you know, and as soon as I get it dialed in, I'm like, okay, now I can play this thing. All right. Okay. Can I show you some David Grissom licks? Well, there was someone knows other video, and we got the audio, but I appreciate it. And you know, David has got 2 TrueFire courses that are spectacular. He doesn't hold back. He shows you absolutely everything he's doing. I highly recommend those. One of my favorite players, and just such a great friend. I would go check that out if you really want something like his, you know. Okay, Les Paul Customs versus Standards. So they sound, yeah, one's all mahogany with an ebony board. I've never really A-B'd them. I've always just gone for, you know, the sounds that I like have always been this. So I just kind of went for that. And a lot of the customs, I just love the look of the Black Beauty. It's amazing. I love that look. But everyone I've tried has weighed 1 million pounds. So that was just out of the question. I couldn't do it. So, but I can't say if I've never compared them, A-B'd them to see what I like better, because I don't know. And everything's very guitar to guitar. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know. So one thing I did talk about in an earlier episode is when I'm picking guitar, though, I just strum it and if I can feel it in the body, it's generally a good guitar. So if I pluck my high E string, I can feel it in this guitar resonating. Definitely the B string. If you're strumming a guitar and it feels like it's just like a plank of wood and you're not hearing anything, I wouldn't purchase that guitar. So you're always looking for the stuff that's resonating. All right, cool. So I think that was kind of it. We got an hour. Thanks for everybody hanging out. A lot of people here listening to me blab about only I sent the Beano video I did with Keith Williams, that get Beano on a budget, to my brother, and he's like, wow. And he plays guitar at a hobby, he's like, wow, that's some really deep, nerdy stuff. So this is as nerdy as it gets, but this is great. This is stuff I love because I think, these things do make a difference when you're playing. And then I feel like I can just bring a Les Paul with me and to many, many gigs and have control over it, because once again, I feel the 50s wiring's made a difference. The upgrade I would make to any Les Paul that you're going to get, I'd go for the 50s wiring, and I would upgrade your pots to the VIP pots. I like that company's pots are just good pots. And then I don't know what the value of the capacitor is in this, but it's just your standard vintage Gibson. It's like a bumblebee cap. I should know that, but you can look at stuff. I just said when I put those pots in, and I bought caps from my friend at 30th Street, Matt, I think, just give me he's like, oh, these are the ones, and okay, I bought them and put them in. Like, I didn't ask, I just trusted him. All right, so once again, thanks everybody for being here as always. I'll be here next week, every Wednesday on the Brooklyn broadcast. Woo! Please tell your friends if you have not signed up, if you haven't joined, and ring the bell so when I'm online. I would love that, and thanks to Phil for being here, and everyone. Once again, here comes the pitch. Thanks for the tip jar. If you feel like helping out, that'd be great. I appreciate it. Also, my TrueFire courses that are available through my website. If you buy them through my website, it's 25% off each one, and frankly, I get a bigger kickback. And I have a new TrueFire course that's coming out soon, October something, based upon some of the things we've done here in the lockdown. It's a pentatonic deep dive. So I've created a bunch of tracks and tab and notation, the whole thing, and gone really deep into all those stuff, which I'm really psyched about the course, because through doing this, I worked out a lot of it in my head as how to talk about it. So it's been fun. You've been my test audience, so I appreciate that as well. All right, everybody. So thanks, Phil Mingen. Thank you very much for helping out as always. Everybody who's here, thank you as always. And I'll see you next week. Have a good one.